It all started with a little girl at the age of 11 who was sent out to get groceries for her family. She was capable, independent, smart, and kind-hearted. She was selfless and wanted to protect all that she could, from a little ant to a homeless man on the street. On her way out of the store, she would usually use her allowance to buy a man food. She'd always make sure he got something healthy and some sort of treat, like a chocolate bar. This was her routine, and when she had a few minutes to spare, she would sit beside him and listen to the stories he would tell of the great times, which she was most impressed by. Afterwards, she would walk back to her apartment where she was greeted by her parents, both hard-working individuals who loved their daughter more than anything else. At night, she would sit on the porch and let her black hair flow in the wind and overlook the city, hoping one day to protect it. Then one day, she went out on another grocery run, and all week she had been saving up her money to buy 3 roses, one for the man and one for each of her parents. As she walked home, and the homeless man was not on his normal bench or on the corner. She stood there waiting for a few minutes for him, but he never showed up. She left it on the bench, wrapped up in a newspaper, and she looked to the stars and said,
"Please let him find it."
And continued on her walk. A feeling of anxiousness spread over her. She made it to the building, walked up the 2 flights of stairs she had to get up to her room. She opened the door, the room was lit, the TV was off, and the stove was on, and she called,
"Mom, Dad, are you up? The stove is on. Do you want me to turn it off?"
She walked down the hall, searching through the rooms, and her room was torn to pieces. The walls were spattered with blood. 2 bodies lay in the center of the room, her parents dead, their throats slit by burglars. Pairia frantically raced to them and began to hyperventilate. She called out the names over and over again. The roses still clutched in her hand. The building began to shake. The walls got covered in a thick layer of ice, and massive tree roots sprang up from the planet, piercing their way through the building, engulfing it in a sea of branches. And as the branches reached the top, she screamed. And thunder and lightning erupted from non-existent clouds, shaking the building and striking it. As the building collapsed, Pairia clutched her mother and father's hands, placing a rose in each of them, and continued to sob and cry and scream until eventually everything stopped. The extreme weather receded, leaving her in a room of ice on top of a collapsed building. But this is not the end of her story. It's the very beginning. In an hour's time, the emergency response team showed up at the ruined building to see a little girl whose arms were covered in cuts and scars and whose hair was burnt a deep red, infused with the blood of her mother and father. She was Mother Nature's prodigy in her 3rd and final state. A week later, she was put up for adoption at the Vados orphanage that was about 6 miles away from where she lived. Every day she would wake up and sit on the windowsill of the top floor and undo her hair and let it flow in the wind and trace the scars on her arm with her fingers. And all she wanted to do was continue her dream of saving everything she possibly could. She did this for about 1.5 years until the Goldflowers showed up. This happy couple was young but incapable of having children of their own. They were the 5th richest people alive, and as luck would have it, they would adopt Pairia, and she would become a princess and a wonderful heiress. They turned her into a young, beautiful lady who was proper, smart, powerful, and every respected quality of a woman. But Pairia didn't want any of this. She didn't like the wealth, she didn't like the properness, and she made an oath to save as many people as possible. And whenever she got the chance, she would sneak out and find the old man at his bench, and she would give him food and money, just like she did when she was a child. And she would bring flowers to the footprint of her old home. And 3 years of this, on her 16th birthday, she snuck out, and on her way to her parents' grave, she saw the light of Watchtower University, and at that moment she knew the place for her to help people was there. And as time sped on, she learned of the legend of the hunters and how they were devoted to the people, and she ran away from the Goldflower estate to the school grounds and signed up and began training until her arms would bleed again, and learned of the latent ability in her. Her stage 1 ability was gravitational manipulation. Mother Nature gave this to lift the hearts of her and others around her. Okay, so all y'all, that was the first backstory. Please enjoy it, subscribe, like, all the fun stuff. But I hope that all of you did enjoy it because it was super fun to do, and all of my people here are being turds. But yeah.
No, we're not.
Bye.